Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. How's it
Excellent,
going?
excellent. Good. So you survived the storms, the apocalypse, the weather.
Yes, the apocalypse is behind us now, so we were able to survive.
Good. It
Although
seriously, it looked
the
biblical out there.
yeah, the river behind my house got pretty high, but it didn't actually flood. Further down, closer to downtown San Jose, it did flood, but where we were, it's pretty good. It's all right.
Okay,
We needed the rain, so it's good that we got some.
that's good. That's good. You probably didn't need that much rain that quickly, but
No,
you
but
got
we
some.
needed it. Well, and the thing is that they're still saying that the reservoirs aren't full. Like this, there's a
Yeah,
few of the smaller ones are full, but some of the larger ones are still only half full. I'm like, oh God, how much rain do we need? 40 days
right.
and 40 nights or what?
Yeah, I know. I know. Oh, well,
Awesome.
congratulations on your, what is it, 700th
Yeah,
episode?
yeah, yeah. If you just never stop, it eventually gets there, right? It's my
That is
that's my
true.
theory. You just stop.
Yes.
If you never stop, you just keep on going. Like you
Yeah.
just don't stop. I mean, I had a podcast before this, which started out as back in 2005, and it was. I think I got to about 900 episodes before I decided to just stop doing it, and I lost all of them because the company that I was hosting with went under and never released any of them. So at
Oh,
least with
not
YouTube,
cool.
I now know for sure. I save everything, backup everything, make sure nothing disappears. So,
Oh, oh, that's heartbreaking. 900 episodes just gone.
yeah, poof. But that's okay.
Oh,
It's all right.
that's okay. You're
It
almost
was,
back.
yeah, yeah, just a few more, almost there.
Yes. Well, you're more than halfway there.
Yeah, yeah,
2/3 of the
exactly.
way there. Yeah.
So, have you played with it? Have you
Have I?
played with ChatGPT?
I have.
And what are your thoughts?
I am really impressed. I went in there because finally I saw so many articles, and
Because
I
everybody's
just
talking about it. It's the only thing anyone talks
everyone.
about. It's
It
like
it
if
is the only thing. And so I went in there and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, because I do corporate innovation. I went in there, I'm like, why is it so hard for big companies to innovate?
Mhm.
And it put out an answer that I'm like, yep, that's right. My work here is done. Like,
That's right. We could just hang up our shingles, just like
yep,
go away because
yep.
it answers
Congratulations, you
every
got the right
question.
answer. And then I put in, okay, well, what can companies do to be more innovative?
Hmm.
The answer is like, yep, that's right.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Definitely out of a job.
Yeah. It's like you're talking
Um,
to yourself, right? I mean, it's kind
yes,
of cool.
yes. I mean, and to be fair, it's like when it's sourcing all of its information from like the internet, from the collective wisdom of
Hmm.
people and time. And so that was good that it was accurate. But I was just like, yeah, okay, this is,
Well, yeah. I
this
mean,
is going to change things, but I think it's going to make things better.
yeah. Well, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people over this because it's such a huge thing now. And it's like it's a mirror, right? It's telling us exactly what we've already said in the past. And if you think about it, that's what consultants do. It tells it's like that you come into an organization, you see something super obvious that they should know, and
Hmm.
you tell them that, and they go, "Wow, I never thought of that." It's like, what are you talking about?
Yes,
It's so
yes,
obvious.
yes. But I think what really struck me is like you said, it's a mirror. Like here's all the wisdom, here's everything we've talked about, and yet we still face the same problems. We face the
Yeah.
same problems for 30 years when it
Hmm.
comes to innovation. And so it kind of just highlighted like, yeah, the knowledge is out there, the information is out there, but it needs to be communicated in a way by a person
Hmm.
that can be heard. And so
Exactly.
it just illustrated to me like this isn't about facts. This isn't
Hmm.
about like, oh, if we only knew. Like
Hmm.
this is about feelings. This is about
Yeah.
connecting with a person and an idea. And so it made me laugh.
No, I thought it was perfect because although here's my question. If a machine were to tell someone that, or you were to tell somebody that, who do you think people would believe, the machine or one of us? Right? That's the question. Is that are they more likely to go to the machine and go, oh yes, machine, you're absolutely right, or are they actually look better to look at human beings and go, hey, human being, you're absolutely right? Like, which one would they believe more, the human
I
being or the
think
machine?
there are certainly some people who will believe the machine, but I think there are more people who will believe the human.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just ingrained in us. Like, you see someone, you're like, oh, that's another human being, and it's just instinctively you kind of trust them.
Yeah.
Plus, you can, I know that chat, the AI can like learn. There was this very cool article I read yesterday about how basically, it learned and it did pretty well on a Wharton MBA test.
Mm.
I think it was a B minus student,
Enough to
and
pass.
enough to pass. I mean, a B is nothing to laugh at Wharton. And so
Yeah.
it kind of learned, it kept getting nudges. But I just think that like when you give nudges to a person and you hear stories and you have that flow of conversation, it's just easier to
Mm-hmm.
believe as a human.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. So really the question is more social, right? It's like I've
Mhm.
always said, whenever we're trying to solve a problem, it's never really the technology. The technology works, right?
Mhm.
It's getting the humans to agree to implement the technology or implement the solution or do whatever it is. So it's the idea is great, and we know that the theory works because we've seen it work here and there, but actually implementing it and having it happen requires the
Mhm.
agreement of the humans. And the humans
Yep.
hate change. They hate inertia. They're such, we love inertia, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny. Every time I talk to engineers, they're like saying exactly what you said, like the technology works, like it's designed. I'm like, guys, you are bringing facts to a feelings party. Like, and feeling parties don't love facts. Like, that's humans are. We are feeling parties. And
Yeah.
you got to address the feelings before we're willing to accept the facts.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you do that though? I mean, it's like, how do you address the feelings?
First, you got to listen and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge the feelings. Be like, yes, I understand you feel that way. And then kind of understand why they feel that way and kind of address all of that. Like, it's kind of laughing with the AI stuff that New York City is just banned, you know, outright banned chat,
Oh, right.
the
What? No one
chat.
can use it? What?
No one can use it. No one
No
can
one in the
use it.
entire city can use it? Is that right?
Or sorry, New York City public schools. So
Oh, okay.
nobody in the schools can use it.
Well,
And
what if you have a course on AI? Shouldn't you be using it for that? I know.
right. And so I was just like, okay, this is kind of like back in the early days of the internet when it's like, you're not allowed to use Google. Like, you
Hmm.
can't use the internet for your research paper. You have to go to the library and go through the card catalog. I'm like,
Right.
okay, New York City public schools. Like, this is here to stay. Let's figure out how to work with it. Like, how can you use it as a tool versus just being like, no,
Yeah.
never.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a human to human conversation. Be like, why are you freaking out? And like putting an outright ban on things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the people who are freaking out the most are the writers and the artists, really,
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, "Oh, this thing is doing my job for me, so you don't need me anymore." And it's like, have you seen some of the stuff that it comes out with? It's got no soul. It's got
Right.
no humanity. It's totally dehumanized.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's I'm sure remember I think it was over the summer. I forget which state it was at the state fair. The guy who used AI to create a piece of art
Hmm.
won the blue ribbon at the state fair, and
Oh,
then
really?
there was all
The
this commotion
programmer
because
should have
it's like,
won that award. Damn it!
yeah, like that's not real art. And he's like, what are you talking about? It took me 80 hours to create this piece. Like, I put just as much effort into this piece of art
Hmm.
as someone who didn't use AI
Yeah.
and technology.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, all right, so what is the measure of something? Is it like how much time a human puts into it? Like, it's raising all these interesting questions that, no surprise, is freaking people out, but they're interesting questions for you and I.
Well, I think from my perspective, it's like another tool, right? It's a
Mhm.
really advanced tool, but it's another tool because you still have to construct the phrase. Like, I've moved to, for my blog, I only use DALL-E created images now. So
Mhm. Oh,
like looking around for stuff that's, uh, you know, not licensed, not licensed. I don't want to get into any trouble.
Yep.
Is tough enough, right? So I said, I want something unique and different. So I'm just going to go to DALL-E every time, and I'm going to type in a phrase, and I'm going to just keep going until I get an image I like. And sometimes
Yep.
it's right there, sometimes it's not. And I use that for my every blog post. And every time I've gotten a really interesting image. In fact, I'm thinking to myself, can I put these on some service and resell them? Because some of them are really cool.
Yes.
And I'm
And
like,
it takes time to get
yeah,
it.
exactly. I got to look at the terms of service and see who owns that. Like, do I own it because I entered the phrase in and it created something? Like, there was this one, I don't remember what I did it for, but there's this one time I think I said people floating in over a cityscape having ideas or something like that, right? And what it did is it created a black and white image of a Victorian town, and there were people whose heads were light bulbs floating over the city. And I'm like, wow. I would never have come up with that. So I'm like, oh, I got to submit that somewhere. It's really good.
Yeah. Submit it to the county fair. You may win a blue ribbon.
But yeah, I mean, do you think the same thing? I mean, these are just tools, right? That are just highly advanced tools.
They are highly advanced tools. But they're just tools. You have to, for DALL-E, like I've used it too, because I needed for a blog post, I needed a photo of a lobster wearing sunglasses made out of olives and toothpicks, because I actually have a story.
I love it.
And I knew there was no way one existed like out there in Google. So I used it, and it probably took me 2 hours of typing and trying and retrying to get something that was good enough. So it was an incredible tool for that. But is it going to eliminate the chef who made me the lobster with the olive and toothpick sunglasses? No.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, what it could do is trigger new ideas in that way, right? Because that's the thing that I think people are looking at it and going, oh, this is going to replace me. And I'm like, no, it's going to augment you, because you can throw some stuff into it and it might be able to create connections that you didn't see before. And a friend of mine and I were trying it over Zoom, and he was throwing in all sorts of crazy things to see if it would come up with something creative. And then every time it came, I said, and it would never do that. So he said, like, what if you could get a banana and a glass of water to go on a date? It would say, well, bananas and glasses of water can't speak. So, they couldn't possibly go on a date. And I said, well, just put it around a fictional framework. Just say, write me a story about a banana and a glass of water going on a date. And it wrote the story, but then at the end it said, this is a fictional tale, blah, blah, blah. The funniest part was a disclaimer saying it was fiction. I'm like, of course.
Oh, I saw another one. I saw this yesterday, that it was it was write a story about getting a peanut butter sandwich out of a VCR in the style of the King James Bible. And it was hilarious.
That's
and
amazing.
It was spot on. So yeah, it's really fun. Like you said, it creates these connections. It kind of like, as you're playing with it, it forces these connections, which, I mean, that's at the root of creativity and innovation. So like, there's a lot of
Exactly. I mean, and the thing is that if you use it right, then it sparks all sorts of cool ideas. Like, I think we kept going on that conversation, and he said, ask me an impossible question. Right. And the thing responded with what if a toaster went back in? What if a sentient toaster went back in time and started making toast for dinosaurs? And I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that. That is cool.
That is awesome. And like, I hear
a good
that
idea for a story. Maybe I'll write a story about it.
Like, that's such a great prompt for a story or a movie. Like, I mean, it can just, the creativity that can come out of that.
Yeah. It's seeing connections that human beings can't see, which is, that's why eventually I'm thinking that one day it'll actually come up with a solution for some of the problems we have. So if it gets smart enough, Chat GPT 4, 5, 6, whatever, we might say, how do you solve global warming? Boom. Or it comes up with a solution that we never thought of. And we're like, wow, why didn't we do this earlier?
It's right in front of us. Yep. Oh, that'd be amazing. But it's possible.
So are you using it in your work at all, or
I've
just for
just
fun
used the
right now?
Dolly
Mhm.
for images and have been playing around with Chat GPS, but I'm not using Chat GPS in work, but I do have plans at some point to like try to see if it will write a blog for me.
I did that.
And
I did that once, and I didn't like the output.
yeah,
It was just so cold and stilted and inhuman. I mean,
yeah,
it didn't sound like a person talking. So
yeah, yeah. I've heard people using it for tweets, which is probably a good place to start. Just a few words and characters versus a whole blog post. Start small.
yeah, but I can see. I mean, I can see the potential. I think that's
Mm,
what happens to human beings. We see something, and then we see the potential of it, and we go, "Oh my God, it's the end."
it's the
Right?
end. Yes,
It's the end.
yeah. It's gonna eliminate my job. It's like, well, what if
Yeah,
it eliminated the boring parts of your job so that
exactly.
you could actually spend more time creating and
Yeah,
even thinking and doing the parts that you like? Like, but we tend to default to
yeah,
all or nothing.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's a sort of part of the backlash against technology is that we need to focus on it doing the burdensome stuff and not
Mhm.
taking over the creative stuff. And I think that's exactly where it's going to fit because you're going to have
Yeah,
the robo things doing the boring stuff and let the humans do the creative stuff. And I know some humans like doing the boring stuff, but don't you think it'd be great to free you up to do the more creative stuff? Because I mean, people's brains are pretty big. We can think about a lot of different things.
yeah,
So it's underutilizing us by letting us do boring things. So
yeah. And plus, even the people who like to do boring things, which I will admit there are sometimes that I like really love to do boring
it's
things, and
mindfulness, right?
it feels so like
Mindfulness.
tangible, and I like it's done. There's a beginning and an end. But like we were all born creative. Like every kid is
Yeah.
creative and curious. And like, what if I could let us go back to that state?
Hmm.
It'd be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wish we could do, and that's why I kind of wish there was some connection because it seems like there's no real connection with creativity and monetization. There is,
Mm,
but it's not sort of, it's still pretty tenuous. It's like it's got to be a
yep.
certain kind of creativity and that becomes monetized because I think there's a disconnect between the stuff we love to do and the stuff we have to do to make money. If those
Mm,
things could be the same, that'd be
yeah.
great. But we have to figure out some way to monetize creativity. And I mean, I think we've kind of started down that path with YouTube and all of
Hmm.
these things, but we need to do more to monetize creativity. That's why I think it's so sad that musicians and people who are creative get paid so little, right?
So
Or
little.
sometimes they expect to work for free because their stuff is, I mean, this is some of the most uplifting stuff that the human race creates is is art. And
Yeah.
some artists get paid a hell of a lot of money and some artists get paid nothing. In fact, most
Yep.
artists get paid nothing.
Get paid nothing.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a big hairy problem we need to solve. But
So, well, I will say I was reading an interview actually with the new CEO of OnlyFans,
Mhm.
which I know people have opinions
Oh,
on it.
there's a new CEO. Oh, I didn't
There's
know
a
that.
new CEO, and part of her mission is actually what you said of turning OnlyFans into a platform for creators.
Hmm.
And yes, there will be kind of the current creators that folks associate with OnlyFans, but like, is this a way where artists, where content creators and or creators in general, this can be their platform because they get 80% of the subscription fees versus I think
Hmm.
it's only like 40 or 50% from
Yeah.
the cut that YouTube creators get.
Yeah.
So at least OnlyFans is thinking about exactly that challenge.
But if you think about it, a lot of times these businesses, that's where they get their start. Like VHS tapes, the
Yes.
purient industries end up making a hell of a lot of money, and then people move into the more legit stuff, right? That's
Yep.
more. But if it wasn't for the purient industry funding it at the very beginning, then they wouldn't be where they were. I mean, if you think about OnlyFans, it's basically like TikTok. It's like
Yep.
a paid TikTok, but for specific individuals, right?
Yep.
So um, they wouldn't be making the kind of money they would be today if it wasn't for the kind of content that they were providing.
Yep. No,
So
I'm laughing because I'm like, it's almost a perfect case study of disruptive innovation, which,
exactly.
you know, Clay Christensen, God rest his soul, is probably turning over in his grave with me, like hinting that OnlyFans is a potential classic disruptive innovation. But it is because it's like, here are these home creators that had no good solution. And so OnlyFans was good enough, whereas everybody else is like, oh no. And,
Hmm.
potentially as it gets better and, a new CEO expands it, and over time, yeah, it could disrupt.
Yeah. No, it's the same thing with, I think I was, a friend of mine a long time ago went and moved to a video streaming company, let's call it,
Mhm. Okay.
and with purient content. And he was a systems admin. And he said that he had to devise whole new ways of doing load balancing because there was so much traffic coming into these sites, more traffic than anyone would expect, that he had to come up with brand new ways of figuring out how to configure servers and stuff like that. So a lot of times these things actually drive innovation in the background because they create certain requirements, which then creates other solutions, which can be used for other things. So it's almost like OnlyFans used that particular model to prove the model that there are content creators who can make money off of their content, and now they can expand to different sets. It's kind of like the way Tinder was innovative, because if you think about it, I mean,
Yep.
the swiping thing, I mean, has is everywhere now. Everyone's
Yep.
doing that kind of
Everyone.
thing, or
Yep.
hot or not, or stuff like that. There's all of this stuff gets little interface elements just become
Yep.
standard
Become
now,
the norm.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. I
but
mean,
and
you go
where do they
back.
come from, right?
Yeah. It's like NASA,
Yeah,
Velcro and Tang and all the
yeah,
stuff that came out
yeah,
of, the space race happened
exactly.
in the background.
And somebody identifying it as something that's innovative that can then go to other spaces. I
Yeah.
mean, that's cool. I think it could be
Yeah.
done. But no one's innovating now, right? Because it's like we're looking at the future and we're like, oh my God, this is we're going to head into a huge recession. Nobody wants to innovate anymore because we just need to, you know,
Yeah.
get to our core business and not do anything new and different. Just make money, make money, make money, make money. I mean, how do you tell people this is the best time to innovate because this is
I
when
know.
things are
This is this is when all of your competitors are shutting down their innovation.
exactly.
This is when, if you invest, everyone's gonna come out of the recession, and you are gonna be so far ahead. You are gonna be setting the standard.
Exactly.
And but there's fear, right?
Hmm.
Like we see all the
Hmm.
stories of the layoffs in tech and this, and oh my gosh. And so first, kind of going back to what we talked about, like you have to hear the fear, like you have to
Mm.
acknowledge it, and then you have to kind of, like, all right, let's take a look at your core business.
Hmm.
Is it really in trouble, or are we just kind of reacting to things? Because
Right.
odds are, for a lot of folks, it's really solid. So, like,
Hmm.
yeah, keep working on that, keep making it solid, but don't overreact and shut everything down. Like, keep that solid and then invest in the future, because, again, you are going to come out so much further ahead than everybody else who reacted.
Yeah.
And you can tell that story, you can give lots of examples, but it really does take a pretty brave and courageous leader to you know to go against the prevailing winds and be like, you're right, we're going to continue to operate and innovate, versus just, the sky is falling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've got a couple different theories there because if you think about it, I mean, the story was really encapsulated with what happened to Twitter, because Twitter lost a huge chunk of their workforce, but they're still
Yeah.
doing what they're doing. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, all these tech companies, they shed a lot of people, but they're still doing what they're doing. I mean, what exactly were those people doing? And if you ask me, this is actually a good thing for everybody involved. It's a good thing for Meta. It's a good thing for these 120,000 people who are now free to go do their own thing, because if they probably are, needed the opportunity. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in every case that I've been where something like this has happened, usually the people are better off in the situation they're on now because they can now be free to go do their own thing, create 120,000 new startups, right? There's at
Yeah.
least a bunch of people out there who are like, okay, this is great. Now I can compete with the company they just let go of me.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And it's funny because there's this great quote of, like, life can only be understood backwards, but it has to be lived forwards.
Hmm.
So it's like, you and I can say that from the benefit of experience of being like, oh my gosh, being let free, like, it's going to end up being like one of the best things for you. But in that moment, you're probably like, a lot of people are probably in a state of panic.
Yeah.
And so it's like, again, kind of like, okay, let's deal with this right now. And then let's open the aperture of like what is possible
Hmm.
now. And it's hard to do when you're in a state of distress, but not everyone's in a state of distress. Like you said, there's probably people who are like, oh, thank goodness, like I've been wanting to get out and I just needed a package to do it.
Yeah. But
So
there's some people who
yeah,
don't realize that. They don't realize that
yes,
they've been stuck. They stuck
yes,
in this role. And if the company didn't want you, then you're like an individual atom of work and experience, and you can go off to somewhere
yeah,
else that wants you, because there's still companies out there that are hiring. I mean, there's tons of people hiring.
yeah,
It's not like
yeah,
that's changed.
yeah. No, that's the thing. It's like you got laid off. It wasn't personal. It doesn't mean like you are not worthy as a human being. It's just your role was deemed not to be needed
Yep.
and you just happen to
Yeah.
be in that role. And so like you are a person worthy of like of having a great life and enjoying your work. So you're now free to go find that place where you can do that.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. But the other
yeah,
thing I found interesting was uh, a lot of these companies, or who was it? I forget who it was, but there was a couple of companies who came out with an article right after the first set of round of layoffs saying, "See, you guys weren't innovating responsibly. That's why you had to fire all these people." And I'm like, or let go of these people. I'm like, what do you mean? Are
yeah.
you saying that all of those additional folks were working on the innovation part of the business, like not the core? So you're saying
Mm-hmm.
you were irresponsibly innovating by hiring twice as many people as you, or like 20% of your workforce was actually working on something that wasn't core to your business. But I looked at that as, well, that's good, right? You want people within your organization looking at your non-core businesses and to see what else you can do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is
But
a logical leap for a
I
headline.
know, I thought that's irresponsible. And it was like Basecamp or something like that, where like these companies that run really, really lean, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I can understand their operating model because
Mm-hmm.
they're successful and they're running lean, but they also don't innovate a lot. They
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit of incremental innovation, but they don't do anything new and disruptive and out of the box. Whereas all
Yeah.
these other companies like Google, they got to plow money back into something else, because as of today, they're still making more money from AdWords than anything else. And whatever,
Yeah.
and eventually, and that's dropping. Like
Mm-hmm.
the AdWords marketplace, the income that they're making from that, I mean, it used to be like 90%, then it's 70, then it's 60, and it's like it keeps going down. But then there's competitors in the market, and everything changes. So they've got to continuously be looking at new things to do, um, because eventually they're going to have to do something new.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it goes back to, all these, people who've been laid off who are now free to maybe create their own company. So if you're looking at a big company and you're saying like now is the time to invest, it's like because 120,000 potential competitors just got unleashed
mhm,
on
mhm.
you.
Yeah,
So they may be looking at your business being like, I think we can do that better. I think we can do
yeah,
that leaner, better, faster, cheaper, whatever it is. So like keep investing in innovating in the next thing because that next thing you may not even know where that next thing is going to come from, but it started working in the workshop now. So like
yeah. Well, it's kind of like
keep
all these
keep investing.
futurists who say, "Oh, there's going to be, once we have autonomous vehicles, you're going to lose 4 million jobs, because that's how many jobs are connected to the auto industry, to maintain cars." But they don't think
Mhm.
about, if we did lose all those 4 million jobs, we might have 16 million new jobs that we haven't even
Mhm.
thought of. Because I
Yep.
usually use the example of going back to 1995 and talking to somebody about being a web designer, or 92,
Yeah.
90. Go back to 1990 and say, you're going to be a web designer when you grow up. And you're like, what the hell's that? Never heard
Like
of
I'm going to
that.
become a spider. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And that's the thing. We tend to only see what we're going to lose and not the potential of what we could gain. And
Yeah.
again, that's so rooted in fear, but like you can see past it.
Hmm. Well, how do you get people to see past their fear? I mean,
Yeah,
have you
it's
done? Yeah, I'm sure you've done it.
I, I've done it. It honestly, it's kind of unlicensed therapy. Where just to be
Wait a minute.
honest.
American Psychological Association is listening
Yeah, I
in
know.
on this.
I know. I never portray myself as a therapist. But it's really it's conversation and it's listening and it's asking questions and really helping people kind of unpack unpack the stories they're telling themselves and figuring out like, oh, that's a story versus an actual fact. Or,
Hmm.
yes, I'm thinking of the worst case scenario, but what are the odds that's actually going to happen?
Right.
And, it's so easy to get caught up in your own head that, like, honestly, just sitting down and having a trusted conversation with someone. And sometimes that's, over several conversations, but that's how I break through it with
Hmm.
clients. I wish it
Hmm.
were, like, oh, I just give them this inspirational quote and they're like, ah, yes, now I understand.
Inspirational
Um,
quotes. I love it.
but no,
It's
it's
like
a little more
Dilbert
time
in real
consuming.
life, right?
Yes. Yes. So yeah, it's no silver bullet, but it's conversation and listening.
Well, how do you pitch new clients though? I mean, people who maybe don't understand how important innovation is to the organization because they're focused so much on their core business. How do you open things up for them and say, hey, here's another avenue you need to be going down?
Yeah, it's again, it's building trust over time. So, everybody is looking to innovate in some way, whether
Hmm.
they would attach that word with innovation or not. So,
Right.
I had a client who's like, "Oh my gosh, we're creating this new thing, and it's just really ambiguous. Like, it doesn't feel innovative to us, but like what we need to do in the beginning is really ambiguous. Can you help us figure that out?"
Hmm.
And so it's like, okay, and then you kind of develop the skills and develop the language of like, you are innovating, you're innovating in this way. There are different types of innovation.
Hmm.
Another area where a lot of people are talking about innovation is building their team's capabilities for innovation. Like, how do we
Mm.
help our people be better problem solvers? How do we help them to be more creative?
Right.
And, it's conversations about like, okay, well, but why?
Hmm.
You know, it seems like it's like, why do you want your people to be creative? And it's kind of like, when do they get to use that? When are you going to ask them to be creative? And then that kind of opens the conversation of actually, here are the places in our business where we do need to change. We do need to
Hmm.
create. And that's why we need people to have these skills. So it's always kind of, finding a pathway in.
Right. But innovation is a term, it's over and done with, right? Nobody uses that
Oh,
anymore.
it is such a buzzword. And I feel bad for it because we've just beaten it to death.
Yeah.
But there's no other better word.
Hmm.
So yeah, so kind of I say innovation and then with all of the caveats of I know it's a buzzword. Here's what I mean when I say it. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, because it's kind of like, you know, it's just a throwaway term that they put on everything nowadays. It just
Mhm.
doesn't seem like it's got any
Yeah,
value anymore. So what do we use instead? Disruption? We use,
yeah.
yeah.
Disruption. Oh,
What is it?
transformation.
Transformation. That's it.
Transformation. That is the new one.
Or the
And
digital transformation, which is what? Just taking something that you were normally doing incorrectly and automating it. So
yes, yes, yep,
it's like it
yeah,
should be called transformation digital because you need to do the transformation first before you digitize it, whatever it is.
yes,
But a
yes.
lot of
But
times
no,
it just sounds like, who uses that term anymore? I mean, tech companies don't do digital transformation. It's just
no,
older
it's
companies
the
that,
kind of older the incumbent companies who are like, oh,
yeah,
digital transformation. Yeah, we're going to be like Silicon Valley. I'm like,
yeah.
Silicon Valley 20 years ago, but cool.
Or here's
Yeah.
an iPad. Ooh.
Ooh. Yep.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well,
Yeah.
do you
So
think
what are
where do you
you
see?
hearing Oh, I was
Oh,
going to ask,
sorry, go ahead.
what are you
Yeah.
hearing people use?
What am I here? They say don't say innovation. Nobody says innovation. It's just new product development or things like that. So it's especially nowadays because it's really because of the recession and everyone's looking at core things, core things. Unless there's a direct connection with some kind of profitability or increased revenue growth, no one's interested in talking about it.
Yep.
That's why it's kind of like, but it's potential, right? I mean, this is potential. And if you're
Yep.
just looking at your core business, eventually your core business is going to go away. It doesn't matter how core it is. Eventually it's going to go away because it'll be eaten up by your competitors, or it'll be eaten up by something else, or some competitor that is not even really a competitor. You don't even think of them as a competitor, but they're going to come in and swoop in and you know, take everything, or just continue chipping away at it until eventually you're going to wake up one day and it's like, oh, what happened to my market share? It's gone.
Yep.
Like, what else am I going to do? But by that time, it's too late because they
Hmm.
haven't thought about what else they're going to do and how they're going to go into a new space or what their next business is going to be. Right.
Yep. Yep. So true. And I think it's funny that it's like, I always say, like, innovation should always be tied to that growth or to the revenue or the profit. Like, don't just go be like, innovate. Like, wee. No, like it's a means to an end.
No, but it
So
usually is. It's just for some
yeah.
reason people disconnect that. They think, oh, this is the airy fairy future stuff that would be nice if we could do now. It's like,
Mhm.
no, it's not that.
Or yes, but it's not
Yeah.
an or.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So I don't know. I mean, it's sort of building prototypes, testing things, a lot of design thinking, getting it out. It seems to be more of a focus on the mechanics and the tactics than on the strategy, really.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I've been seeing lately. How about you? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, definitely a lot on the tactics and the buzzwords.
Hmm.
But
Well,
that's not
keywords
new.
rule our life. If it wasn't for
Yeah,
keywords,
yeah. No, I mean design thinking, all of that. It's so yeah, a lot of focus on tactics, which I think, again speaks to the like, oh, like recession, we have to do things. If we're doing things, then we're valuable. And you have to pull up and be like, okay, but why are you doing that?
yeah.
What are you hoping to achieve? Because
Hmm.
if you don't know that, like, then you could be doing the wrong thing. So
Yeah.
like, let's figure out what the goal is.
Yeah. And of course, it's always, increase profitability, increase
Yep.
revenues, blah, 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 make more money, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. So,
Yep.
and that's what I feel sometimes that's sad because there's so many great ideas out there that don't have a business model attached to them. And we can't,
Hmm.
so they're immediately discarded, even though they're great ideas that would help humanity. They're like, oh, we're not going to do that because we can't figure out how it's going to make money in day one or
Yeah.
in the first few months. It's like, but look at it a little bit, look a little bigger than simply your bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's why, I mean, that's a great case for why you need an ecosystem out there of, different funding sources, of foundations, of, different places that could say, okay, yeah, big Fortune 50 company, that ain't going to work for you. But like you, we believe that could change the world. So, we'll take it. We'll pay you something to make you happy. But like, there are other avenues to get
Hmm.
ideas to market, but,
Hmm.
it's harder.
Well, I'm a big fan of sort of coming up with the ideas internally, but then hiring external companies to create prototypes and things like that.
Yep.
Because a lot of times your internal folks don't really have the bandwidth to be able to
Hmm.
work on prototypes, but you do have a lot of people with bandwidth to be able to generate ideas and concepts, right? So like
Yes.
bring a company in, have them build a prototype, show it off, do the design thinking thing, and then decide if you're going to do something with it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a low cost method, but a lot of companies, what I find is this is why they support the startup ecosystem. They go, well, I don't want to take the risk. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to see if find another startup that's doing kind of what we're looking for. And then we're
Hmm.
going to wait till they get to market fit or just before, and then we're going to buy them.
Yeah.
And then we just suck them into the organization. It's like they're our external innovation lab. So we don't have to
Yeah.
take the risk. They're taking the risk. And then we can pick them up after they've taken the risk and proven that it works, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, but think of all the innovators within your company who probably came up with those ideas and are going,
Yeah.
why did this new guy you just brought in and gave him 10 million? I had that idea a year ago, but you didn't
Yep.
listen to me.
Yep. And I don't know if you see this. I see a lot of companies like, okay, we're going to keep an eye on startups and maybe make little investments in them, and then we'll suck them up. But then they get to like, oh well, you haven't proven that this could be big enough, so we're just going to keep waiting. And then by the time the big company feels like it's safe, it's insanely expensive. They're like, well, now it's too
Yeah.
expensive, and you're like,
Yeah.
let me explain to you again how pricing works. Um, and so it's this kind of hilarious catch 22 of like, they're cheap but they're too risky, but now
Yeah.
that they're not risky, it's very expensive. And it's
Yeah.
like, do you see the problem with that logic? Something needs to
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah. Sometimes I
Yeah.
feel that people are just like bumbling around, just falling into things and they may eventually, luck out and and hit something at the right moment. But when I
Yes.
always thought it would be a great idea to come up with, because we have so much data on everything. It's like, why
Mhm.
can't we come up with an AI that can just sort of look at everything and go, here's the best time to do this. Here's the best time to do that. I mean, do you think we can
Yeah.
get close to anything like that?
Well, I mean, we can ask it today. Like, I want to go into
Should I buy
ChatGPT
Tesla
right now
stock?
and be like, what is a $1 billion idea that has not yet been taken to market? See what it says and then go do that.
I got to try that.
Maybe it
I got to
knows.
try
Yeah.
that. Hopefully it's not a time traveling toaster or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
No,
the
that I wouldn't know how to make that happen, but
but a
that's
sentient
cool.
toaster, there was a sentient toaster in Red Dwarf, so maybe that's where that came from. I don't know. I
Mhm.
mean, it's like combining a bunch of different things.
Yeah. No, I
It's
remember as a kid,
interesting.
there was an animated movie called The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh
So
yeah,
it was
that's
very
right.
brave.
So toasters have
Toaster.
been sentient in the
Yes.
past.
Oh, who
Oh
knew?
man. So how long do you think this is all going to last? Is this going to be a 10-year thing, a 5-year thing, a 2-year thing? Do you think we're already coming out of it, or
I
how
think
are things?
I think the in terms of kind of the financial stuff, the recession, I think the market is coming out of it
Hmm.
slowly. I think I think it'll take us probably
That's
till the
great for
end of
my
the year.
401k, by the way.
Yeah,
Thanks
I
for
know.
that.
Yes, you're welcome. Um, I think it'll take us probably to the end of the calendar year for people to start for the conversation to shift.
Hmm.
Because the market, believe it or not, tends to be a leading indicator of things with all the institutions you do buying and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, I think the end of this calendar year, things will be up, the conversation will have shifted,
Hmm.
and kind of we'll be back on track.
So now's the time for people to really innovate. They need
Yeah,
to invest money in coming up with new ideas, new products.
exactly. Use this year to test and to learn and to pivot so you can go big in
Yeah.
2024.
Well, the thing I find really interesting is that it's so inexpensive to test this stuff. I mean, even with hardware, even with hardware and 3D printers,
Mhm.
how difficult is it to, come up with idea and then execute a prototype and then test it? I mean,
Yeah.
this is the best time ever. It's never been
Yes.
easier to test things.
Yes.
But
And to find people to test on, because now like we're out and about, but we're also comfortable with this, Zoom and other kind of technology. So like it's so much easier to get to people to get reactions to the
exactly,
prototypes.
exactly.
So it's just like so much potential and it's so much easier than it ever was.
Yeah.
Um,
So this is the perfect time, basically.
Perfect time. Do it now. Yes.
Well, that's what I was telling about these people who are out of work. This is the perfect time now to do your startup, because you probably have a bit of a bonus from, from
Yep.
being let go, and
Yep.
you got money in the bank, you've got time. So these two
Yeah.
things put together, it's
Yep.
it's like the perfect moment for you to
Yep.
try something, test
Yep.
something. Like, what's something that you've
Yeah.
always wanted to do? If you've always, like, let's say you've always wanted to launch a beauty brand or something like that, go for, try it.
Try
Like
it.
what,
Yep.
and you can try it minimally
Hmm.
and test it and
Yep.
see how it goes. I mean, so many new businesses could be, I mean, it's a boon for innovation. I mean, like you said, a lot of people
Yep.
are panicking, but I think for sort of the human race in general, it's actually a good thing to allow
Hmm.
this kind of sort of mashups of people doing new things.
Yeah. And like you said, because there are so many people, like you can find people to work with too.
Yep.
Like, go to your colleagues and be like, hey, do you want to do this together? So it doesn't have to be just you doing it. There are other people that you can easily, quickly access, right, that and trust. Bring them in on the journey.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, whole
Yeah.
teams are probably like
Yeah.
thinking to themselves, well, why don't we just take what we were doing? We know there was a demand for it, and just do it
Hmm.
ourselves, right?
Yep.
Go off and keep the team together. I mean, if you have a good
Yeah.
team, it's cohesive and they work well, why not go off and do it on your own anyway?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep the band
I
together.
encourage that every time.
Yes. Every time. Yes.
Awesome. So what else were we going to talk about? Let's see. AI. What else? What else were we going to talk about?
Well, we were going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about the recession. And we're
Receptions are
going to
much
talk.
more fun, I think, than
Okay,
recessions.
They are more fun. I think we're going to talk about like which we already touched on, the challenge of going from ideation to execution.
Right. Right.
And, but we've covered that too, especially, talking about the startups and the investments and the like, or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
Yep.
think it's like I see this all the time. People are going, ideas are, a dime a dozen, it's
Mhm.
execution that matters. And I'm like, no, they're both
Really?
equally
Yes.
important. Because if you don't have an idea, how are you going to execute it? Or what are you
Right.
executing? And
Right.
it's understandable that you have thousands of ideas because you can generate thousands of ideas without actually executing any of them. And it's normal to have a funnel, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the way it works. It's right. You've got a ton of ideas up here, and then it funnels down to things that you decide you want to execute on. And some of those ideas are great and make money, and some of those ideas are great and don't make any money. And those are the ones that are always never touched on,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it's always like that. So people talking about execution being the most important thing, you can execute a bad idea. You can execute a bad idea. You can execute very poorly, or you can
Yeah.
execute, I've just seen so many. I mean, how many startups have you seen that just sort of disappear because it was an idea that probably never should have been built? Right. I mean,
So
there's probably
many.
plenty of those, right?
Yeah. Oh, and you see ones that have amazing, brilliant ideas, but are executed so poorly,
Yeah.
wrong business model, wrong fund, whatever it is, you're just like, oh, like it just breaks your heart because you're like, the world needs that idea,
Yeah.
but it's not going to get it until it's executed right. And
Yeah.
this startup, that startup
Yeah.
struggled.
Well, I'll give you an example. So I've been going through some of my old emails, and I
Mhm.
came across these emails from a company called A Company. I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but basically what they did is that they went through your entire, like, you signed up with them and they went through your contact list. And what they would do is they would scour the internet for news and interesting tidbits that your contacts might be interested in. And they would send you a briefing every morning saying, hey, here are all the things that are going on with your
Mhm.
contacts. So you could actually use one of those things and reach out to them and,
Mhm.
start a conversation. And I thought,
Mhm.
wow, that sounds like a really, really useful service. I'm glad I signed up for that. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know why I stopped using it. And then I went to their website today, and it's like, oh, we've been bought by Cisco, and we're shut down. And I'm like, that was like a really super useful service that
Mhm.
now somebody else can do, right? So somebody, like
Mhm.
anybody else, can go out in there and build something like that. I mean, as a sales tool, I think that would be really, really useful, because a lot of times
Yes.
you're spending time trying to get in touch in these contacts' heads and going, what can I talk to this person about? How can I, make the connection? And this thing
Yep.
was doing it in a nice automated way. And bye bye. I think.
And
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was to say, and it was probably making money, which is why it got bought, but it wasn't making enough money to be meaningful for Cisco.
Right.
Like they couldn't figure out a way to make it big enough for them to care. And
Right.
instead of being like, go free, little birdie, like
Yeah. Yeah.
they just killed it.
Yeah,
And
which is,
you're
I've
right.
seen that happen so many times. Large companies, they buy these things, and then they just suck the people in, and they kill them. I don't know why they do it, but so
Yes.
many interesting ideas have been killed that way that it almost makes me
Mhm.
think that, I wish there was some way we could extract those out of there and get them out of there.
I know, kind of like freedom fighters of like,
Yeah,
no, let the
exactly. How do
startup
you?
go. Free the startup. Yeah. Yeah, but
But
it's true. And, silver lining, it creates an opportunity for other entrepreneurs to see the hole in the marketplace and be like, all right, we're going to
yeah,
create the next A company.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's stopping people from doing it? I guess it's like, it's not really funding, it's not really time. Is it just because they're concerned that it's not going to fly? Or, I mean, I guess that's what it is, right? I mean, we're all in a
Yeah.
kind of a state of fear right now, and we need to make that leap to
Yeah.
be able to
Yeah.
try something
It's,
out and see if it works.
yeah, we all, everyone has different risk tolerances. Everyone has, very different, very real kind of pressures on them financially and, mortgages and rents and caring for family and all that.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that very real things that get in the way.
Yeah.
And they can but that also kind of blind us when there actually is an opportunity, like,
Right.
a severance package that can get you a
Yep.
couple of months.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just, and habit is strong. Like inertia is a powerful, powerful force. And when you're like, you know, doing something, doing it remotely well, it's easy to kind of keep going instead
Yep.
of picking your head up and being like, oh, but maybe over there,
Yep. Yep.
something better.
Exactly. How do we get people to do that? I guess it's not that easy.
It's not, people are gonna people, and going back to what we talked about in the beginning, it's humans having conversations with humans, people
Hmm.
having conversations like what you and I are having, and people hearing it and being like, oh yeah, maybe like, let me take 5-10 minutes and just think about what could be, kind
Hmm.
of pick my head up from the day to day and
Yeah.
dream a little bit.
Well, let's think about the next 10 years. I mean, one of the things that I'd like to see is more people working on the big problems, like not the
Mm.
low-hanging fruit, because it seems like
Mhm.
everyone has no problem, releasing a new app to get us to look at our phones more, but they have big issues. How do we save, solve climate change, solve, homelessness, solve,
Yeah.
food issues, like the big human problems. We don't seem to be spending that much time solving those. I'd love to see more of that.
Hmm. Yep.
But the problem
And
is those are big risks, right?
those are big risks, and they take a long time to pay out. And they've been kind of relegated in everyone's minds, like, oh, that's the nice stuff that, when I was at Harvard Business School, they had this phrase, which thankfully they don't use anymore, of, your life is divided into thirds: learn, earn, return. So it's like, oh, I'll go fix the world once I've retired and I've made
Mm,
all my money. And it's
hmm.
like, we need all of us working on big things like homelessness, like climate change, like, women's health, like education. These are big, big problems that require a lot of perspectives
Hmm.
and are really, really challenging. So let's
Hmm.
delegate all the rote work to the AI and let it take our
Yeah,
job,
exactly.
and then we can focus on the important things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly right. Awesome. So, is there anything else you want to cover, or should we wrap up?
No, this is great.
Okay, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
You can go to LinkedIn, Robyn M. Bolton, or you can hit up my website,
Hmm.
MileZero.io.
Nice. One of those IO domains. Where is
Yes.
that? Is that like an island in the Pacific somewhere, or is that
Uh,
really
it
that is it?
it is. I looked at, I forget exactly, but I looked up once, the Indian Ocean sort of thing.
Oh,
But
cool, cool.
yeah.
So you're based in the Indian Ocean? Doesn't look like it.
No, well, floating.
Just
We
beyond
have
the
the camera
wall.
stabilizer
It's
on.
one of those.
Yes.
It's one of those. What do you call it? Bures, over water bungalows, right? Is that
Oh,
where you
yeah.
are?
Yeah, if only. It'd be much better than the snowy mass that I'm actually sitting over in Boston.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great. Talk to
Oh,
you
this has
soon.
been great. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Bye.
Bye.